everybody, welcome back to Devils United. We're back again with another preview, but this time it's for the FA Cup semi-final, and we've got Russ. How are you doing?
Hi, yeah, I'm doing well, thanks very much. Yes, not too bad.
Thank you as well for taking the time to come on. I really appreciate it.
No worries at all. Glad to be here. It's good.
Thank you. Before we get on to the preview, I'll just say hello to people who's already in the chat. Good afternoon, Jerry. Thank you for coming in. Hope that you are well. Good afternoon, Ravi. I hope you are well. Thanks for coming in. We'll find out very soon what Ravi's predicting, because when he predicts someone to win, it's always the opposite. But that's what the opposite always happens. So we'll wait and see. Good afternoon, Statman. I hope you are well. Thank you for coming in. Good afternoon, Liam. Thank you for coming in. Hope that you are well. And good afternoon to I Like Coffee. I hope you are well. Thank you for coming into the chat. So I thought I'd discuss a little bit about Brighton, because I know Brighton have had a lot of things going on this season, like the loss of Graham Potter. You've had a loss as well, and the backroom staff and a bit in the board, because I know Chelsea has recruited some parts, but you could look at some ways that it's also been positive for Brighton, because I think you've definitely overexceeded compared to what people initially thought.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. We've been growing slowly, getting in the division. It was all about staying in for 2 years under Chris Hughton. Then we had, obviously, we had Graham Potter came in, and things were going well. And we just started to go on a proper upward trajectory when Chelsea came a swooping. And that was pretty irritating timing, I've got to say. And we feared the worst, even though we knew we'd planned really well ahead in advance in all matters to do with the club. Nowadays, you've still got that apprehension, haven't you? When you're doing as well as you think you've ever done before, you're thinking, well, what could go right if you lose the manager? But De Zerbi's come in, and he stepped it on after a small period of getting used to things. He's stepped it on even more, and it's been incredible. We've had a great season. We've loved it, and it has the potential to be our best ever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think the manager has been absolutely fantastic of De Zerbi. I think for me, like, because under Graham Potter, you played like mostly in the back three kind of system, and I think that four in the back has really done the world of favours. I think it's allowed you to play much progressive football, more possession based football as well, and you're getting on playing the as people would say, the top teams, and you're getting them head to toe with them. Like, it's like if you're losing, it's only by narrow results.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I think the problem with Graham Potter's football, yeah, he played, as you said, three at the back mainly. He did change things around game to game and within games, but predominantly he had a three at the back system. And it's a bit of cat and mouse, isn't it, with the wing back scenarios? It's really hard to get that right. And what we were doing, we were tending to be a little bit slightly too slow in our build-up. We were possession-based, we'd dominate games. And you look at the stats, and usually when we had more than 50% possession, we would have been seen to have played well, and we would invariably not have won the game. And then it seemed more often than not, when we had less possession, we'd win, because we would play more of a counter-attacking game. And obviously, if you're playing the better teams, that's where that may have come into play a lot more. So that's where he got his successes. But overall, we were lacking in that final third. Time and again, they were talking about the XG, weren't they, and how our XG was crazy for the number of goals and games, where we were successful. Whereas under De Zerbi, what he does, he'll let us sit on the ball, playing a back four, not being too broad across the back, just having the two centre backs, passing it around, encouraging the players to come onto us, and then having the bravery, the balls, as De Zerbi keeps calling it, to then just play out through in between the lines, and you can get onto the front foot a lot more effectively. And we just looked that bit quicker as well. I think everything, they're touch tight, they're really quick, snappy with the passing. They've just looked that bit sharper, and I think we've stepped on. I think we're a couple of grades above where we were under Graham Potter, who is an excellent coach. Chelsea is going to scar him a little bit, but not too much, because he is a good coach. But it was completely the wrong setup for him. It was it's a big club role where you got probably the most entitled fans of the lot, probably barring none, who didn't give him a chance from the off. They were trying to give him time, but in the end, he's got a load of egos to deal with. He's the new guy going in there, and it was always going to be difficult. Whereas, and then of course they signed a load of other new egos coming into the team, and none of that just fitted with what he does, which is development stuff, and that's what the Albion are all about. Under De Zerbi, it's the same because the whole model and the structure's there, regardless of the coach. So under De Zerbi, he's got used to a few elements of how we like to do it. That's fitted in with what he's doing, and he's developing those young players, and they've been part of what we've done in this new system that we're playing. And definitely, it's working better with four at the back, and everyone looks comfortable in their roles. They're so well drilled, and you can watch any game you watch. You can just see that there's anticipation in everything we do. With any setup, when any player takes a certain position up, you can see that there's a plan in place for the next players to move across or move up or do something with the ball or off the ball. That's part of that setup. It's all about the training, and they work really hard on the training field nowadays.
Absolutely. Just want to say as well, good afternoon to Reese. Thanks for coming in. Hope that you are well. I do definitely agree with what you're saying. I think with Graham Potter, because I've always said, like, with Graham Potter, everybody likes Graham Potter at Brighton. Like, you hear, like, he's the next England manager. He could step into any big team and he's doing a great job. And I said, as much as like Brighton, he developed Brighton so well. And I think, for me, he did need that challenge, to become like that best young manager. What you hear of like Nagelsmann, because he's like one of the best young managers about as well. And I think for me, I said he needed that step up. And the problem with Chelsea, I think, because he played the three at the back, maybe the formation could have worked because it's like a back three specialist team. But I completely agree with what you're saying. The egos wasn't working, the ownership as well, because I don't think he really has much of a clue about the Premier League, of how it works, how FFP really works as well. So I completely agree with what you're saying, and I think Graham Potter's left Brighton in a good hands, and I think with De Zerbi now, he can bring that this Brighton team into the one step further, and you're seeing players like Casado doing well. You're seeing Mimimo.
Missima, the Japanese guy,
yeah, the Japanese one. Yeah, another one who's doing very well. And I think for me, Lewis Dunk, he's having a fantastic season in that back four as well.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned him because he kind of goes under the radar because he's part of the furniture, and he was with us in the Championship, and he's been with us for more than 10 years. He's a local boy and everything else. It's just he's taken for granted, really. I wouldn't say that's not fair. Actually, the Albion fans do appreciate it, but you know what I mean. He's kind of almost like it's just a given that he's in there and he's doing his thing, and he wouldn't move and whatever else. But he's been brilliant. He's stepped on. He's embraced those challenges, particularly under De Zerbi since September. Him and all the players actually have all talked about how they're exhilarated and they've discovered a lot more about football than they realised they could know. And I think even though he's one of the oldest of the old guard, along with another local boy, Solly March, who's also just escalated in quality under De Zerbi, I think they've learned as much as anyone else, even though they've been in situ for so long. And Lewis has had a great season. I think the key is it's the link up, because you mentioned Casado. He is absolutely superb. He's such a good player, and what he does, he just seems to run the midfield. He up and down the pitch, but particularly in the defensive areas, he seems to sniff the danger out super quickly. And he's just what he does, he gives that bit of cover to the centre backs to allow a 2 centre back system to work all right. If you had the way we play at the moment, if we played that under certain other managers with less drilling and less success in the attacking parts of the pitch, it'd be under a lot of pressure, and it would be interesting to see how that will work. But I think Lewis is fitting that system really well. He's all about a lot of, again, reading the game well, marshalling the team. He's not particularly mouthy sort of centre back. Actually, he would be quite quiet, but I think he does talk on the pitch to the degree he needs to. And his partnerships with both Adam Webster, who's been there for a while now as well, and also Levi Colwill, who we've had on loan, young lad from Chelsea, which is pretty unusual for us to bring in a loanee. Actually, we normally introduce our own youth players if we're going to do that. But he's been brilliant, and whoever's been alongside Lewis has been, has benefited from a good partnership. But yeah, he's had a great season. Casado's been outstanding. Mitoma, you mentioned, And really everyone, Solly March has come on leaps and bounds, and we've got young Ferguson in the team as well, Evan Ferguson. Yeah, I mean him and Veltman, who's obviously the experienced fullback for us, are both going to be out for this game of the weekend. But they've had great seasons, and Ferguson's still pretty new to it. Of course, he's only played a handful of games, but he's already looking the real deal. He's going to be a really good quality centre forward, which has brought that element that we were lacking. Admittedly, that's something Graham Potter didn't really have the benefits of, because he wasn't just quite coming into it at that stage because he's a young lad, but he's been brilliant as well. He's been the missing ingredient, I think, to link things up. Danny Welbeck, of course, your old boy, can do that as well, but he's been in and out of the team a bit. He's less injury prone now. We've sorted out a couple of his longer term problems, but of course he's not able to play 90 minutes every game. So Ferguson coming in has been a big bonus to us. That's possibly our only disappointment from the weekend's lineup, is that we'll have to rely on Danny to play a large part of that match, and then we've got one or two backup strikers, but they're not on a par at the moment. So that's the one element we're not sure about. But we're good in wide attacking positions and through midfield as well, with the likes of McAllister and Enciso, who you probably saw that scored that searing winner at the weekend against Chelsea, and he's another one that's just come through in the last year, signed about a year ago for I think it was 6 million we signed it. No, 9 million I think we signed it for, and he's going to be a cracking player as well.
Mm-hmm. The thing is with Chelsea, like, I've said that your scouting is probably one of the best in the world. How you're able to find all these hidden gems all over, and for me, you develop them into fantastic players, and plenty of top clubs are getting attracted by them, and then you're selling them on for quite a lot of money.
Yeah, that's the business model. We've got Tony Bloom is our club owner and chairman, and he's a Brighton fan through and through. He's been in charge for a good decade or so. He's only 53 now, but he's been a maths genius, hugely successful in business. His exact wealth isn't known, but he's probably a billionaire. But what it is, he's made a lot of money out of the betting industry. He understands all of those systems, and it's all about data. So we have got a version of Moneyball, you could call it, to put it crudely. But essentially, he extracts data that he's given and processes it through his algorithms and his software that is unique to him. No one else can take that. So Chelsea could strip out as much of our backroom as they want, but they're not going to be able to get the key stuff, which is that interpretation of data. So what we do, we're probably, as you said, one of the best in the world for scouting. But part of that is as a result of the data. So we focus where we scout based on that data. That seems to be the way it works. It's a unique system. Brentford are doing a version of it as well. Their owner used to work for and then with Tony Bloom, and they are not the best of friends. They fell out in business circles. But essentially, they do a version of what we do. But I think what we do is more extensive, and we've got scouts all over the world, and we'll just look at whatever markets are available. And our model is different to any of the big six clubs, which is that we will look for players that we can sign in advance of selling our key assets, so a year or two before we're ready to sell the big guys, so they get integrated into the system. And by the time we sell whoever our star players are at the time, for example, Caicedo at the moment, we'll have someone ready within a year or two, so that when they're sold, they can come in. It won't be an exact match. It may not work always as well, but we'll have the best that was available, and we will have signed those players for probably something under 10 million, and then we will sell them on 2, 3, 4 years later, whenever it might be, for a massive profit. And that's how we can afford to make a profit, which we've now started to do on top of everything else, because of the player sales, obviously, because it's working. Not everyone, of course, some of them haven't worked, but I think we're getting more successful more often with that now. And that system, that is the key to everything. It works through the whole of the club as well, in terms of not just players, but coaches. We'll already looked at potential future coaches to replace De Zerbi, monitoring their progress as they go along. And if De Zerbi goes in, say, 2 years' time, we'll have data for the last 2-3 years in extensive detail on the key candidates we think might fit the role. And that works across all aspects of the club, from the admin staff through to catering, through to anything. We've got replacements ready for any of them.
it's the best way to be honest, because you're looking at it now where you've probably seen it all over the news about Chelsea, a shortlisting loads of different managers to, and I think I heard De Zerbi was one who they was looking at. They're looking at Vincent Kompany, they're looking at Pochettino. So you could tell. I think that the problem is that with other teams, they're not as well prepped as what Brighton is, and
Yeah.
that's why for me, you're right. For me, there's no reason why you couldn't stay in the Premier League for a very, very long time.
Yeah, I think that's the plan. I think the plan is to do that and to preferably stay top half, which is obviously a bit harder because Villa are coming back really well. Newcastle are going to have ongoing funding, and actually, it looks like they're doing a something vaguely similar to us in terms of trying to sign younger players to develop and bring a long-term plan through, which is quite sensible considering what they might have done with all the money they have. But yeah, that's it. That's the key. It's we have to operate in different circles to the big six. We're never going to buy high-profile, high-cost Premier League ready players. That's not how it's going to work. We just simply wouldn't do that. The closest we get to that, we might try and sign Levi Colwill from Chelsea, but they'll probably ask for too much money. And if they do, Tony Bloom's really good at just going, no, that's fine. We'll leave that one. We'll go to our next target. But yeah, it's difficult. It is difficult. And you mentioned Chelsea. It looks like they don't really have a focus. Yeah, they're looking at all the obvious good names, good managers, good coaches, but there isn't a real focus there. There's players that will play in different styles there. It's the same with other clubs that when they've recruited. When you looked at what Everton did and what Palace did, there's not a real focus. There's not a clear strategy there going on. The same with Chelsea. They just want to hire a high-profile coach that they hope will fulfil their potential. And I think you need to have more than that really to work well. But what we do, as I said, player-wise, what we do is going to be different. But what that will hopefully do is allow us to keep making money and to keep in that top half of the table, and hopefully, on occasions like this season, to have a genuine chance of Europe, which I think we'll make it. Where we'll be in that equation, I don't know, obviously, but I think we're good enough to be in that, certainly in the top 7 come the end of the season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm looking at the table as we speak, and at this moment in time, you're currently sitting in the Conference League, and you're only 1 point behind Aston Villa, who's played 2 more games than you, and you're 2 games behind 5th place Tottenham, and they're only 4 points behind. So if you got 6 out of 6 points out of them games in hand, that you'd be in the Europa League. And I think the way you play, you look at the way, like, for instance, West Ham. The way they broke into Europe, and they've done brilliantly in the Europa League, and they're doing brilliantly again in the Conference League, and I think that will potentially could happen with Brighton as well.
Yeah, I think that's it. The big challenge, if we did get in, would be to manage a bigger squad, because obviously you do need to have that if you're playing in Europe and all that stuff. Because of all the travel involved, the recovery times, and players are just going to get fatigued anyway if you don't have a big squad. So we would have to up our ante a little bit in terms of how many players of the right quality we could get through. That could be an interesting challenge. But I agree with you. I think with the games in hand, we should be able to get in there. I think it's probably easier to do it still via the league than it is via the FA Cup, because we'd have to get past you, and then, well, you can't say anything certain, but you've got to fancy Man City to be in the final, haven't you? And that's our one team so far that we've really not had any success against. We did beat them 3-2, but they had 10 men and they'd already won the title. It was a brilliant comeback from 2-0 down, but still, there's a little bit of an asterisk next to that one. So they're the team we haven't really cracked. They're a brilliant team at the moment, obviously. But I think it's going to be very hard to win it through that route. I think the league's more likely, because I think we're quite good against those teams around us. I mean, Tottenham was a travesty of justice a couple of weeks ago. It was absolutely ridiculous. We were far the better side, and the decisions were. I've never seen anything like that. I'm still angry now, 2 weeks later. We outplayed Chelsea. We outplayed Liverpool when we beat them, obviously with League and Cup, particularly in the league game where we got the 3-0. Drew away at there as well, and obviously beat you guys beginning of the season. So I feel like those kind of games we can do well in. We should have the 3 points. Tottenham should have 3 points less. But even notwithstanding that, we've got Villa last game of the season away. We've obviously got you guys to play at home in the league as well. And we've got Who else have we got? I think we've got one other game against one of the sides around us. And we've still got to play City and Arsenal as well. So it's going to be interesting. It looks like a bad run-in, and on paper it is. But I think we can just about make it. We'll see how we go though.
Yeah, I think you can definitely make it as well. And I seen Liam in the chat earlier on saying that he thought it was great to see yourself and Aston Villa both in the Europe spot. And on top of that, I think the FA Cup is a completely. I love the FA Cup. I love the beauty of the FA Cup. How you can see different teams winning it. Like you see over the years, like Portsmouth winning it. You see, like Southampton getting to the final, and Wigan's won it before. And I think that's the beauty, that you do see teams who are not the big six winning the FA Cup, most recently being Leicester as well. So I do think though you definitely will have a good crack, because I think for me, you definitely play fearless. Ravi mentioned in the chat about beating Liverpool. You've beaten us the last 2 games in the trot. So an Arsenal beating like playing very well against the title current title holders in the league so far. I think you've definitely got a very, very good chance of winning this FA Cup.
Yeah, I mean, we've never won a major trophy. We've never been in Europe before, and I mean, to get either or both of those things, obviously it'd be both if we win the cup anyway, would be absolutely delightful. I mean, I'm now 52 years old, and I'm old enough to remember the '83 Cup final. I didn't go to it as a kid, but you know, it's been hanging in the air like it's almost a little bit like England with 1966 and winning a trophy since then. It's that wanting to put it to bed for decades scenario. To finally win a major trophy would be brilliant, because it would put us on the map that little bit more than we've already done by just being in the Prem and doing well. It would also, our arch rivals Palace have never won a major trophy either. So there's the race to be I don't know if race is the right word, because we've been trying it for decades, but the challenge to be the first team to win it would be brilliant. And obviously, if we did, that will be there for forever then, as the first of the two to win a major trophy. So there's that as well. But I mean, we would just, for us ourselves, it would just be amazing. The party will be off the scale, I think, if we managed to win the trophy. That would be for sure.
Mm-hmm. We'll say hello to some new people who's in the chat as well. Hey there, Martin. Thanks for coming in. Hope that you are well. Thank God Harry Maguire can't play. Use this excuse for a footballer. I would say it's probably more of an advantage to us that Harry Maguire's not playing, that's for sure. Good afternoon, Niall. I hope that you are well. Thanks for coming in. Hey there, Sean. Thank you for coming in. Hope that you are well. And hey there to Torsen. Thank you for coming in. I hope that you are well. I was literally just thinking of what I was about to say, but yeah, with I wanted to ask about Crystal Palace. Like, is it a completely different rivalry compared to what's the bit of the background with the rivalry?
Yeah, it's probably the weirdest rivalry, I think, in football, definitely in this country anyway. It goes back to the 70s, and you had Malcolm Allison was the manager of Palace, and we had Alan Mullery, and they've been, it was Terry Venables and Alan Mullery were the managers, and they were rivals. I think they were club rivals for positions in midfield, for the captaincy, for their club and for their country. And then they came into management at an early age, both at the same time. So there was a bit of spice going on between them. And then you had Malcolm Allison as manager as well. And in that period, the 70s and the 80s, lots of football hooliganism. All of the games with London clubs were always had a bit of a derby feel about them, because, you know, the London to Brighton thing, it's not far between. And you'd always get really big crowds going in either direction to games. So it was one of those. But then Palace being South London, it's actually technically, or at least it was till Crawley came into the Football League, it was the nearest club, believe it or not, for Brighton. It's nearer than Portsmouth as the crow flies. Not that that's really anything to go by, because obviously Palace have loads of clubs nearer to them than Brighton, so that only works one way round. But it was really about divisional rivalries. It got really fiery on and off the pitch. The managers had rows. There was interaction, shall we say, between managers and crowds, and it was just really nasty for a good decade or two. And then we didn't play each other for a fair while as we went into decline with financial issues and various other things. But the rivalry is very fierce. The fans hate each other, absolutely hate each other, and there's always been trouble. Unfortunately, that is the way of things, isn't it? Between the clubs, I think even to now there's still a few little skirmishes going on here and there. But in terms of on the pitch, I'm not sure if players through the eras have felt it as much in the more recent era until now. I think when Gus Poyet came in, it's that people started to get it a bit more, amongst players, because he fired things up a bit. But it's really just it's a thing that's been going for about, what is it now, 50 years. And we just, whenever we play each other, we just absolutely hate each other. And it is quite a local game in terms of, it's an hour on the train. And also you've got to think, although it's a longer distance, it's 42 miles, I think it is, by the way, the distance between the grounds anyway. You have got that usual crossover that you get with any derby match where, you've got people that work in the same environment. So you've got Mid-Sussex, Crawley, Gatwick, those areas. You get a lot of people who are both Palace and Brighton fans gravitating up or down into that area. So you've got a lot of crossover and with nothing in between. So, you have got that kind of rivalry that you get between nearer clubs. You get, obviously, Manchester, Liverpool, you get loads of people work either in one city or the other. And you've got the same thing with us as well. So, it's all very keenly and fiercely felt between the two clubs. And long may it continue. We love it. It's great.
Yeah, because I used to see it I done a Premier League quiz a year ago, and I was doing a little bit of research, and I seen Brighton Crystal Palace a rival, because obviously being up in North, I'm not going to really understand the rivalry compared to yourself, and I thought, this is an odd rivalry with one being a London club, one being from Brighton. How does it really work? But I can understand a lot more now why there is a rivalry. And you do see it, though, don't you? Different cities getting a rivalry, because probably I like Coffees in the chat may agree, is that you're seeing more rivalry now with Manchester United and Newcastle in the recent year. I'd was brewed from the 90s.
Yeah, for the Keegan and Ferguson thing. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and I suppose United and Arsenal as well, which is, again, it's to do with title rivalries and stuff like that, isn't it? It comes up for different reasons, I think, really. But for us, it's a mixture of geography and historical divisional rivalries, and obviously, again, now as well. And what's beautiful about it is they're our little brothers. That's the way we look at them. They're 4 years younger than we are as a club, despite trying to claim there was an older version of themselves. And they're also now finishing, hopefully this is going to be regularly, below us in the division. So, we kind of, on one hand, it'd be funny if they got relegated. It's obviously not going to happen now. But on the other hand, we don't want them to get relegated, because, we want to play them every year, obviously, to keep the rivalry nice and spicy, but also so that we can finish in the same division above them every year. That's what we're aiming to do.
Well, yeah, exactly. I think for me, you like that little bit of rivalry in football. So, who doesn't like a little bit of rivalry? I think I've seen it where you had to pick your 5 rivals. Somebody made some kind of quiz, and it's funny because I think for me, you get another thing what I've seen Brighton fans say to Crystal Palace fans was about when Crystal Palace used to have to share the stadium as well. Back in the early Premier League days, which is quite funny too.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, but it's good fun.
It is good fun, absolutely. Marcus is in the chat. Hope you are well, Marcus. See, you learn something new in football every day. Exactly, you always do. So we'll go into some questions. I know there's quite a lot of questions here. Some for me, some for you, mostly for you. I'll get through as much as I can. Ravi, question Mays, how do United approach this cup game after the disastrous Europa exit? I'm going to be honest, what I did say, because I've done a Europa League preview on Tuesday, I said I would much rather win the Europa League game and lose against Brighton, because the Europa League still secures the Champions League if you win it. That's how I looked at it. But now we've got to obviously put out... I think Ten Hag always wants to put his 100% effort in, but the problem is that there's still some players injured, so there's a lot of players you can't really rotate either. Luke Shaw could potentially be back. Maguire's out. Yay. Rashford could potentially play in the game. Garnacho could potentially be back. So I think there's still a lot. I think there's still a lot of changes in terms of we haven't got our main centre back partnership, and either Dalot or Malacia, if he's back, will be playing on the left, and maybe Shaw as a centre back. It's a weird one just because you can't really predict how the game's going to really go. Did you watch the Europa League game at all, Ross?
I didn't see I've seen the goals, but I've not seen the highlights of that one. I was recording my preview podcast last night actually, so I missed it. But yeah, I mean, it seems mad that they're so inconsistent, aren't they, United? It's really hard to call what they're going to do. I really rate Ten Hag. I think he's a really good manager. I think after a few misses, I think you've got a real hit with him, definitely. I think he's going to be the long-term option for you guys. But it seems like it's taken a while to turn it round. It's almost like a tanker that's going to take a while to turn. But once it's turned, it might be in full force. And it seems like there's a lot of stop-start going on with United. I guess the injuries haven't helped, obviously. But yeah, I've no idea who you're going to have. I didn't see the game, as I said, but it looked like it was a fairly strong squad you put out. I don't know if you picked up any more injuries or any issues like that. I imagine you really hope you haven't, the way things have been going. But I think for me, the worries is just if Rashford's fit, and obviously we know what he can do. Casemiro's a great player, and apparently Eriksen's back, isn't he, as well?
So, yeah, Eriksen started playing again. I think he basically got thrown back in because Sabitzer picked up an injury in the warm-up I'm trying to think, who did we play? We played last week as well. Do you know, because we keep playing so many games, I'm having to think who we're playing against constantly.
Was it Southampton? I can't remember now.
No, it wasn't Southampton. Nottingham Forest, that was it. Yeah, we played Nottingham Forest where we won 2-0, but Eriksen had to come through on the warm-up because Sabitzer picked up an injury. So I think he basically got thrown in after his injury. But he did play very well. So I think he was absolutely fantastic. Reese has got a question for you, Russ. De Zerbi is a possible favourite for the AC Milan job in the summer. Should the post become available, Russ? What's your thoughts on this, and who do you think will replace him if he did move on?
Yeah, he's obviously, being Italian, there's going to be connections there. He's managed there with Sassuolo before, obviously, and played there and everything. But I think it's a hard one to call. I think I've got a feeling at the moment he wouldn't want to go anywhere. He seems to be a projects man. I think he was at Sassuolo for quite a long time. And then I think after one blip somewhere, he then went to Shakhtar, and he only left there because of the invasion of Ukraine. So he would have, and he stayed until all of the players, the foreign players, have made their way safely back out. So he's a man, I think, of a lot of integrity and honour and all that sort of stuff. And I think he's already said in the future he'd like to go back and finish the job. So I think he's a man that likes to see a project through. This will be a work in progress for him, obviously, at Brighton. And on that basis, I'm not sure he'd leave at the moment. That's my kind of balanced idea of it. Obviously, as a fan point of view, I'm desperate that he doesn't go, because whoever we get in next, it's hard to imagine we could do better than we are at the moment. But I did think that with Potter. So who knows? In terms of if we did go, and who knows with these things, you never know. Milan are a big club and there'd be an attractive proposition. But if we did lose him, I'm not sure who we go for. Probably some of the people that were supposedly in the running last time out. De Zerbi was our first choice, apparently, but we had people like, is it Knutsen that was, I think, a Danish coach. There's the guy who was running the Denmark team as well, actually. I've forgotten his name. And there was people like the Celtic manager were mooted, maybe someone like that. But to be honest with you, whoever it is probably someone neither of us have ever heard of. Someone who's up and coming, and who's in about a year from now is going to be, or in a few months' time, is going to start to have his star rise, but still be under the radar. And that's probably who we'll go for, whoever that is. That's the way we roll, really. It wouldn't be any of the obvious names. I don't think we'd try and attract a big name that might previously not have come to us. Trying to get the Pochettinos of this world, which would be probably ambitious anyway. Never going to go for someone like that. It will be someone up and coming if we did have to change. But we'll have a plan in place. I'm confident of that. It's just a matter of who it will be. But I really hope he can stay for at least as long as Graham Potter, which was 3 and a bit years, to really see how far he can take this team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think for me, in my opinion, I don't think he would leave. He's not even been here a season yet, and already is making terrific impacts. So in that kind of way, you look into think, what could I do if I had 2 whole seasons? I'd do a fantastic job here. So I if I was De Zerbi, I would personally leave. And Reese as well. He is a big fan of Milan, but apart from the Champions League, they haven't done so well in other cup, other runnings like the league, and that's something what they're the current champions of. So as much as they've done well in the Champions League, they're not doing so well in other areas. So you look at him and think, is that a right move for him right now?
Yeah, I just don't think he'd move so soon for a new challenge. No. I just don't think he would do. The only question is one of the very, very top jobs. Obviously, then we've got a problem probably. If Real Madrid came calling, or Barca, maybe one of the two or three biggest clubs in this country as well. But I don't think any of those are going to change anytime soon. If we're talking about Man United, Liverpool, and then maybe Arsenal, I don't think any of those jobs are going to be coming up anytime soon, to be honest. And I'm not sure he would want to go necessarily to clubs that Graham Potter was attracted to, your Chelseas and Spurs, because I think he's seen what's happened there, and I think the way they're run, and I think he's all about having a settled environment and allowing himself and the people he's working with to grow together. And you're not going to get that with Chelsea, let's face it. Spurs maybe, but I don't think Spurs are looking in that direction anyway, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Ravi's got a question for you, Ross. What's your thoughts on your strikers? Because in terms of your final third, you've improved massively.
Yeah, well, we get a lot of goals from all over. I think the problem we had before was not getting enough goals from midfield and defence. Defence probably is still a problem, although Lewis Dunk scored a couple of games ago. But I think in terms of the strikers, that has always been a little bit of a problem, as I said, until Evan Ferguson has come on the scene, who won't be there on Sunday. We've had an issue with that central striker, and we've found a way to not have to rely on that so much. We've had 7 goals and 4 assists from Mitoma. Solly March has somehow come in with I think he scored 8 or 9 goals this season. The midfield, McAllister, apart from penalties, he's still scored some other goals from open play. And Caicedo gets the occasional goal, and other players like Pascal Grosch really weigh in with a few as well. So we've got those goals coming from all over. In terms of the strikers, apart from the new resolution, which is Ferguson, we've had Danny Welbeck, who's been in and out with injuries. He's been more consistent this year, and he's decent as an option, but really is to be treated as like a squad option, really. And what we've got below that is not so good. We've got maybe some people in the academy might be coming through in the future, but the only other major striker that we've got on our books in terms of senior squad is Dennis Undav, who was pushing up trees after we signed him. We loaned him back to Union Saint-Gilloise, which is the Belgium High Flyers that Tony Bloom co-owns, our chairman and owner. And Mitoma was on loan with him as well, actually, last season, Undav, and both of them did fantastically well. Undav hasn't been able to make his mark in our team so far. He's played a few games. He's played in the early rounds of the Cup games. And he's looked like he could be a good player, but he hasn't quite clicked. He's been a bit unlucky. There was one triple chance he had on goal where, the first one was with his weak foot. The second one was a good save. The third one hit the post. The third one he should have scored in one game. I can't remember who that was against. But it feels like he's one of those players, if he gets 1 or 2, he might suddenly get a flurry and he might turn out to be a success story. But I think the fact that he's not really broken in and been part of the equation as much as we would have liked means that we are still a bit weak in that department. That's probably our weakest area of the field when you look past Ferguson and Welbeck, which of course is just Welbeck on Sunday. But you never know. Undav might pop up and score a winner on Sunday. That could be his game. That could be the start of it.
Well, thinking about that 4-0 win you had, you literally battered us everywhere. So I think anyone can score from that. Like, I think everyone went forward at that point. Like, even one, I think you only had like one centre back who was at the back, and everyone else was forward.
I mean, honestly, with respect to United fans, I think it felt like we could have doubled that score. And if we'd have ever beaten you 7 or 8-0, we're never going to do that again. I really wanted us to, just purely for the fact it would never be done again. But 4-0, to be honest with you, is way better than we'd ever done against you in the past. But yeah, that was incredible. Yeah, it really was. Actually, one guy, just speaking about strikers, one guy who we've got who's described as a forward, I think he can play wider as well, or in a 10, is a guy called Simon Adingra, who's on loan at Union Saint-Gilloise this season. He scored 13 and assisted 13, so he's doing very well. He's an Ivory Coast international, young guy. I think he's about 20. He's one to look out for the future. That won't be relevant for this season, but he might come into the equation next year. So for anyone looking into the future, what Brighton are going to be doing, that's probably where we're going at with strikers in the future. But yeah, I mean, can we have a 4-0 again? Do you mind on Sunday? Is that all right?
I wouldn't be surprised if that happens. I must be honest. I would not be surprised. Speaking of forward players, Niles asked, do Brighton miss Trossard?
I don't think we do. It's weird to say that because he was our top scorer at the time. Obviously, this was only in January when he'd scored 7 and got a few assists. He'd been in a rich vein of form, and of course he got that hat trick at Anfield as well, as we got a 3-3 draw. And we thought we were going to miss him, but we had Mitoma. We knew he was good. We knew he was coming on, and he was going to be a really good player for us. But losing Trossard and then having to rely on Mitoma, and there's no back out here. There's no backup. We were worried. I think a little bit. He was coming into the last year of his contract. Basically he was in his last year, but we had a year's extension option. So effectively, he had 18 months left in real terms. And Arsenal offered, I think it was 27 mil plus a couple of add-ons, if they win the title and stuff like that. And I think we thought it was quite good value considering he didn't want to stay. He somehow his mojo had gone just before the World Cup. I think just during the World Cup, he had a bit of a bad time of it because he was being kept out of the Belgium team in that tournament by Hazard, which was a fatal mistake in my opinion by Martinez. Probably cost him his job actually, Martinez. Because Hazard's not been at his best for a while, and he wasn't good in that tournament, and he was persisted with, and Trossard had been an absolute on fire. So by the time he came back and then started playing poorly for us, he was on a bit of a downer, and I think he made his mind up he wanted to move. He didn't have a bad attitude as such, but it was just, you could tell his psychology had gone, and I think it was a good move for us to sell him. But we were a bit worried. But Mitoma has just filled the void like you wouldn't believe. It's been fantastic. Great doing the same thing basically, but with more flair, even more flair. But Trossard's a good player. Don't get me wrong, and I think it was a good signing all round. He needed a change. He was a really good addition to their title campaigning squad, wasn't he? And we didn't miss him bizarrely, so it worked out perfectly for everyone.
We'll go on to one last question, which was from I Like Coffee. Is Dan Ashworth a miss already, or have Brighton found an upgrade in the replacement?
I think this goes back to this succession planning and having plans in place and backups. We always look to progress people through the ranks, and we had David Weir, who you'll recognise the name as obviously his former Everton and Rangers and Scotland centre back, who is a very intelligent guy. I mean, you think, he's quite a bruising centre back. He's probably not going to be Mr. Articulation, but he's actually a very intelligent, calculated sort of a planner. And he was given the assistant role. I think he was doing another role, and then he was upgraded to assistant under Dan Ashworth, with a view to seeing if he could fit the role if and when Ashworth gets poached. Ashworth went, obviously, as you know, to Newcastle. He was on gardening leave for a while, so David Weir came in an interim role, and they were happy enough to see he'd stepped into the role well enough. So I don't think, even though Ashworth had a really good reputation when we signed him, we were really impressed that we'd managed to get him because he'd been the development and progress coach or whatever it is at the FA for 6 years during a period where England's star was rising and a lot of their young talent was doing well. So it was seen as a great acquisition to get him. We were worried when we lost him because a lot of the good recruitment happened during his watch. But I think the recruitment is about much more, as I said earlier, than just the technical director. So David Weir has stepped into that role, and I think it's been seamless from what we can see and what we've heard. We have chats. I'm a member of Seagulls Over London, which is a group of fans that have guests from the club come up and give talks, and we've had a number of talks with David Weir, with our head of media guy at the club, and people like that. And from everything we've gleaned, and even things spoken off the record, it sounds like it's been a seamless transition. So he seems to be like another gem that's just come up from nowhere. And I say from nowhere, it's all been planned. And also on the recruitment side, head of recruitment was a guy called Paul Winstanley, who was one of the people that Chelsea poached, because obviously they looked at what we were doing with recruitment and thought, right, grab their main guy. And he obviously had a lot of good input, but he's not the only ingredient. And we've promoted Sam Jewell, which is Paul Jewell's son, who's only 33 years old. He's been with us for 2 or 3 years working with the youth team, conciliation sort of stuff. And at the age of 33, he's been promoted to head of recruitment. Now, he was the guy that brought all these South Americans in that we've got shining in the team at the moment. And Ciso, who's just broken in, Buenanotte, who's in the squad, but not really. He's one still just under the radar. And obviously Caicedo and Sarmiento, who unfortunately is injured at the moment, but is another really good talent from Ecuador. And Sam Jewell was head of South American recruitment for us, and now he's head of recruitment overall. So in both regards, I think it's been seamless, and that's why we're so so chuffed with how things are going at the moment, because we know the plans are there across the board with the staff. So so I don't think, much as a lot of fans were worried, that we've suffered for losing Ashworth. Not so far. Time will tell, I guess, when it's ready.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. But so far, I think you're doing well. My queen is in the chat. I hope that you are well. Thank you for coming in. We've had 2 score predictions in. We've had from Rather, who is the main jinxer of them all, has gone for 3-1 for Man United. Thank you, Rather. That means we're losing. And Reese has gone for a 1-1 draw. Man United to win 3-1 on penalties. What's your score prediction?
Ooh, well, can I just say I'm pretty bad at this as well. I don't know. I've just seen anyone here who's a betting man or betting woman, whatever I'm about to say, that's the one thing do not put your money on, because even though I'm making it what I think is an informed guess, it's always wrong. So my hunch would be a close game, actually, I think, and I think we could edge it based on your defensive difficulties you're having at the moment and the form we're in at the moment, playing well consistently. I think we could edge it 2-1. But now I've said that, that's the only score that's not going to happen.
Well, I must be honest, though. I don't like saying it, but I don't think we'll win. I actually don't think we'll win. I've gone for a 2-0 win for Brighton. I think we're losing.
Wow.
I think in the first game of the season, I think I was like, I think we'll win 1, maybe 2-1, but that didn't go very well. But I just think Brighton, they're getting better and better and better and better, and we just go. I can't see us winning. I think if anything, we might get a draw and it go to extra time, but I'm not really confident about it at all. But I do wish Brighton the best of luck for this season. And
Cheers.
I do hope that you do very well in terms of getting into Europe, and if you do knock us out of the FA Cup, please beat City. Please kill their treble hopes.
Yeah, well, it's overdue. We haven't managed to beat them in what I would call like a squared up game where there's nothing I said there's like an asterisk against that game against City. If we did beat you guys, I think to go against a full on firing City, it's a tough one. But I don't know. Maybe we could do it. It was overdue, isn't it? And also, as I said, getting to a final itself would be overdue. I think we literally exactly 40 years since that one and only FA Cup final before, which of course was against your good selves anyway. It's who knows what might happen. I was hoping actually in the '83 we played Sheffield Wednesday in the semi-final. We were top flight that year, although we got relegated. We played a top division team in every round until the semi-final when we played Sheffield Wednesday, who were second tier at the time, and then we played obviously you guys in the final. And the notion that we were in the draw with a Sheffield team again, I was thinking, please can we have the Sheffield team for the second tier in the semi-final again, please, and then play maybe yourselves beating City. I was hoping that might be the route. Not to be, but let's see how it goes. But thanks again, and best of luck. Apart from the obvious game, best of luck to you for the rest of the season as well. Especially if you're playing if you're playing Villa or Spurs or Liverpool or any of that lot, please win those games. That will help us.
Well, we've got Spurs actually coming up on Thursday, so hopefully we'll beat them just for you. But thank you very, very much for coming on. Would you like to shout out your socials?
Yeah. So I do a podcast with my friend and co-host Peter. Our pod is called Brighton Rock Podcast. We do at least one a week, sometimes two, depending on how much excitement is going on at the time. We're on Twitter and Instagram. It's at Brighton Rock Pod. Look us up by all means. Give us a follow, and we're happy to follow back as well. Yeah, it's Brighton Rock Podcast. Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on. I really, really appreciate it. As I say, best of luck for the season, and enjoy the game. May the best team win. But have a lovely weekend. Bye-bye.
Cheers.